and kind of easy to remember.
Easy to remember.
Yeah.
That's right.
We're playing intro. Russ, I think my belly just got unfull from Thanksgiving. I ate so much.
Man, I tell you what, I tried to take it a little easy this year. I'm adding too many pounds over these holidays already.
Well, I'm taking the other approach. I'm pushing myself. I've gotten to this point. Let's try to get to the next point. But welcome to the Travel Ball Show with John Bennett and Russ McCubbins. We've got a great guest this evening. We're going to talk a little baseball, but in the mix of it, I'm sure we'll touch around a lot of different sports. But Jay Sorg with Sorg Sport and Wellness from New Albany, Indiana is joining us. Jay, welcome.
Oh, thanks for having me on. Two great guys, man. Guys I've known for a long time. This is I'm excited. This is great. I'm excited you guys are doing this. Great job.
So the goal of the Travel Ball Show is to help parents navigate this travel ball journey. And it is a journey for sure. But Jay has been through several experiences that we'd like to share and we think can help parents and players in this youth sports environment. So Jay, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you've got going on now, as well as how you got going.
Yeah, well, I mean, really, I grew up in this area. That's how I know you guys. Grew up over in the Butcher Heights Point area, went to Trinity High School, loved my time there. Got a chance to go play baseball at Morehead State University. Very lucky, had a great athletic director there by the name of Steve Hamilton, who played a lot of years in the Yankees organization and a couple other places, and it was a great baseball school. I was drafted by the Cincinnati Reds in '94. Ended up spending parts of 13 seasons over the next years there.
13 years.
Yeah, 12, 13 years, something like that. I had a little gap in between 2003 and 5, I think. I left in 3, came back in 5, and left there and went back to be the head coach at my alma mater. My wife, Shelly, played volleyball at Morehead State University. We went to be the head coach there, stayed there 5 years, and had a chance to do some really good things there. Came back home to spend more time with our family, and we've ended up in Floyd's Knobs, Indiana, and we have an outstanding facility, Sorg Sports and Wellness, over in New Albany, Indiana, and it's been just a great place with a great group of people. It's a perfect location.
You know, we've seen it from day one. It's grown into a really cool thing. Tell us everything Sorg Sport and Wellness does.
Yeah, so we really house 3 different businesses in that one building. We have Shelly Sorg's Transformation Training. She does sports-specific training. She was she's CSCS certified. She was a strength coach at the Division I level. She also trains adults. She has a wonderful program, a 12-week wellness workshop where you spend 1 hour in a workout, and then she takes you back into our kitchen, teaches you how to cook, how to shop, nutrition, also a mind-body part of it, how your mind can play a big part in your health. We have Jay Sorg Baseball Academy, where we do baseball and softball. Wonderful staff with me. Hernan Arabarn, who many people would know here from the Bats, played the big leagues with the Reds and the Brewers, and he's second or third all time for hits in the Bats. He's got a banner hanging in the stadium. We have Brody Tanksley with us right now. He's home in the off season. He's still playing, and then we get a lot of the college kids will come back and help us, and some former pro guys. And then we also just added about 2 years ago, right around when COVID hit, so it delayed our opening, but Southern Indiana hot yoga, and so it's been people love that hot yoga, and really I do too. You got to try it if you haven't tried it.
So I talked my son into doing the hot yoga one time, and he loves it. But he said, "I'll do it if you do it, Dad." Let me just tell you this: Shelly knows what she's doing, but my tail isn't quite yoga certified just yet. And I did it. I can say I did it, but I can't appreciate the calmness and it's training has reached a new level to where it's not just batting practice. It's not just lifting weights. It's other things, mental, yoga, stretching, condition. There's a lot going on, right?
Right.
And you guys seem to have done a great job of embracing that.
Mm-hmm. And it all flows together. That's what's been great about our facility. Everything works into each part of that facility.
So, you talk about your history. Little fact that some people know, but not a lot. Jay and I kind of grew up together on the baseball field. Played against each other in high school. Didn't play against each other in college, but when he got drafted, he played for the Princeton Reds in 1994. Well, it was my first year as an umpire in the Appalachian League, and I've got a couple pictures of Jay Skinny Tail and me, and I was a lot skinnier too. But yeah, so we've been on the same field on a professional level, on a college level, both as players and coaches, which is kind of unique. So it's kind of fun to watch local talent climb that ladder with same goals. Russ, you're a hitting instructor.
Well, let's don't try to compare Russ to Jay here.
Well, I was just saying we got something in common.
Russ knows his stuff, man. I know Russ. I've known Heck, Russ and I played together. When you talk about, we've all grown up.
We
together.
go way back.
Yeah.
So I believe Jay and I met at age 15 or 16. Me being a St. X guy and he at Trinity. And I want to say it was around our junior year we actually played together on what would nowadays be called travel ball, Jay.
That's right. American Legion baseball.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
You don't see Legion baseball as much as you used to, and that's unfortunate because it's still going on a little bit, but that's good baseball.
It was a great setup, and it is. It was kind of the travel ball of the day. And back then, Trinity and St. X had combined for a team, and who else? There was another.
I think the third school, Jay, it works when you look at a map. I was told this years later you can triangulate 3 schools on a map as long as they don't exceed a certain amount of enrollment in those high school 9 through 12 grades. We could pick up the team. So there were times I think we did Wagner High School, and maybe times we did another school.
Hey Jay, this is the off season right now, and you're seeing a lot of people get into that off season mode and really try to prepare for the upcoming spring. A lot of parents are trying to find hitting instructors. I can vouch for Jay personally. He's not only a good person, good friend, but he's helped my son achieve success and did it in a manner and still doing it in a manner that teaches the kids how to evaluate, critique their own swings, and give them the tools to be successful. But if you're a parent out there trying to find a hitting instructor for your child, what are some things a parent should look for? Because there's a lot of people out there that claim to be the best hitting instructor ever, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of layers, and I think a lot of questions we dive into today, there's a lot of layers. So I'll kind of start from the top. I think first, very simple is that instructor going to be invested in your child? And, you get 2 types of instructors. I think you get some that are just kind of out there to give a lesson, to collect a paycheck, and you can find, you see that very quickly in a lesson if they're invested, if they're into the lesson, right? But then there's another one out there where if you hear somebody that's always talking and taking credit for one of their players' successes, they're not invested in that child. They're not invested in that player. They're invested in their own glory and their own self. And I think that's probably one of the biggest pet peeves I have with instruction is when we never get in a batter's box. I've never taken a swing for any of my lessons. I've not lifted one weight for them. Or done any of the things that they've done in the off seasons and during the seasons, and I'm sure Zach not going to take any credit for it. And there's a lot of instructors that will do that. And when you find one of those, I think you run because they are going to try to take credit, and it's about them, not about your child. So you're paying good money. You make sure it's about your child. Number one. I think number 2, it's important that you find, especially when we're talking about hitting or really pitching. Also, we're not just teaching you to swing. We got to teach you how to be a hitter. I think we got too many people out there just being swing coaches and not hitting coaches. And there's a lot more in depth than just the mechanics of the swing. And I think you got to be very careful when someone is ready to clone players. People are so unique. Bodies move so much differently. That's why biomechanics is fascinating right now. And the way one person gets to a ball is certainly not going to be the way another person gets to the ball. And when you have somebody that's teaching one way to do it, that's a big red flag for me. So I think you're looking for an instructor that's going to interact and be into your child, and make sure that they're not cloning. They're out there. They're specific to your player.
And there's some good hitting instructors out there. Both of you guys sitting here are good hitting instructors, but as many good ones as they are, there's some bad ones too, right? So parents, if you're out there evaluating options, word of mouth. We were talking about this before we got on the air. Asking Jay and Russ, how do you find new clients? And word of mouth came to be the conclusion as far as the best way to promote what they do, because people are going to talk about you in a positive manner if they're getting a good experience. And I couldn't agree more, right? And Jay and I talk about this often, Russ. You guys are both busy doing lessons. How do you scale the business, right? You can't duplicate yourself. And that's a challenge when you're good.
Yeah.
But I joke about that often because he is so good. But no, thanks for those tips, Jay, because I know parents are wanting to understand which way to go, because some people just don't know, right? And those are some good tips. This is for both you guys. Would you consider yourself an old school guy or a new school guy as it pertains to hitting?
Go ahead, Russ.
I think so. For Jay and I, as we learned to play, knowing both the schools and the coaches that we had growing up, we learned old school. That's what I would say that answer would be. And then as time moves forward, you realize that if you are the type of person that's just stuck in the past, you're probably going to get run over. So for me, I'm not exactly the most technologically advanced guy, but I will bring I will bring in a few tech things. I'll take video and I'll show them. I'll break it down a little bit, but I'm a little bit more in the ball never lies sort of camp. But
you know what? I asked that question, and some of our listeners may not fully understand what old school versus new school means as it pertains to hitting. Nowadays, there's a lot of different philosophies, and you got launch angle, you got exit velocity, a lot of different ways to measure metrics and lift and all these fun things that we talk about. The old way of hitting, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, was more of a coming down on the baseball and creating the backspin approach versus what we have today with lift. Jay, what would you consider yourself?
Yeah, I think I'm a hybrid. I think there's a mentality of me that's very much old school, a toughness that comes with being that really good hitter. I think, look, being direct to the ball is extremely important, and there's a way to do that. And but there's also some value in the science that we have and the technology that we have. And if we're not using it, then we're crazy. Then we're cheating the people that we're trying to help get better. And let's face it. I mean, you talk about just video, how we're able to break things down with video nowadays. We've seen, how many swings do you think we've seen in our lifetime? And it's still hard to see it with the naked eye. You go back to the video and slow it down, and you see things that you just can't see with the naked eye. So why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you capture things like exit velocity and bat speed and find ways to make that better? How can we get our bat in the zone quicker, keep it in there longer? Technology is telling us, well, it's in there that long. Okay, well, let's see if we do this. Can we get it in there longer? Can we get it in there quicker? We need to use it. And so I think the problem that a lot of the old school people have, and I'll speak on this end because we're getting old, and we'll probably, I would say people would think that we're on the older side of it, but I'm not going to criticize guys who played in the big leagues 10 years and hit 300 and tell them they didn't know how to do it or tell them they did it wrong. I think that's the problem that you're starting to see, why you're seeing a lot of new school guys and old school guys butt heads, or just solely living on analytics as opposed to, analytics are important, but that's how you make your decisions. You don't live on analytics because a guy is, you may walk in a different day and that guy's not the same guy he's been over the course of the season that day. And you got to be able to determine that. And I think that's where you're starting to see some of the old school and new school butt heads, but it's a hybrid in there. And in fact, a lot of things that people are saying now just have fancier terms. And it's the exact same thing that we were saying and things that we were taught.
Give me an
Just a
example.
different term.
Give me an example.
Well, I'll give you a great one. We talk about sequencing all the time. Extremely important, right? And why are we talking about sequencing? Because we're passing energy from one body part to the next, and we're picking up energy, and we're speeding up. And you know what they used to tell us to do? Keep your hands back. You know what? By keeping our hands back, what did we do first? We rotated our lower half first, and we rotated our upper half, and then the energy transferred into our hands. So they told us the right thing, but now we know why we have more bat speed when we keep our hands back a split second longer once we start our hips, right? So a lot of things, it's quantifiable now, and I think that's probably an easier way to say it.
Well, you're listening to John and Russ on the Travel Ball Show with our guest Jay Sorg tonight. Jay's former pro, NCAA head coach and player, currently hitting instructor, and owns a facility with his wife Shelly in New Albany, Indiana. If you have any questions for Jay Sorg this evening, you can text in on the PPL Pitching Performance Lab text line. That's 502-437-9680, 502-437-9680 on the PPL Pitching Performance Lab text line. And we'll make sure to get Jay and Russ these questions. And I say Jay and Russ, it's a hitting conversation tonight, guys. And I'm not a hitter. So they pay guys like you to help their kids. They don't pay guys like me.
You know a lot about it.
I saw some good hitters. Let's just say that.
You've got a son who's a great one. I think you have some validity to talk about.
I think he's the mailman's kid. Well, that's good stuff. Talking about tech, is there any particular tech appliance that you use quite a bit and you'd recommend other parents explore doing that at home maybe?
Well, some of the stuff you would probably want to come to our place for because it's a little bit expensive, and some of the stuff is a little bit cheaper that you could do at home that I think is a good value. We have a balance on how we use our tech because it's, there's times where it's a little more applicable to what we're teaching that day. I do like the blast motion sensor, and that's one you can pick up at home. And it gives you really good swing metrics. We use Rapsodo. That's a little more expensive, and that would be one you want to come in, but it gives you ball flight metrics. It tells you, it's giving you the external. So where blast is giving you the internal thinking of mechanics and your swing metrics, you're getting the ball flight metrics with the Rapsodo, and that's more external. Where am I trying to hit the ball? Where is it trying to go? And it's showing you where you're hitting the ball, the distance, the exit velocity that you're getting. We use, of course, video. And then we started in our place. I'm fascinated with vision, and I just think it's probably the most undertaught part of hitting. We do all these things, but if you can't see the ball, it doesn't really matter, right? And a lot of seeing the ball is not just seeing it, but getting the brain to process the information that their eyes are seeing. And so we're starting to use the SnapTech glasses also in our facility.
You've been talking about those guys for several years now, and it's cool to see you doing that. Russ, what kind of tech do you use?
John, I take plywood, screwdriver.
Hey, don't forget the electrical tape. I know there's a stick with some electrical tape in there somewhere.
Spray paint will be in there somewhere. If you've ever seen the former Golf Channel host Michael Breed, if you've ever watched Golf Channel at all, he formerly was an instructor on the Golf Channel. And he's always bringing in like a swimming pool noodle or a hula hoop or something. But mine is more, it's more how do I create a feel for what I want this player to do? And so, like Jay said, everybody's a little different. Some people, their issue might be they don't rotate their hips early. Some might be their bat path is too much down on the ball. And so the little gadgets that I create and make are all sort of in a hope that they can begin to feel the sequence of events, and then how does the barrel go from above the strike zone and work its way down into the zone and then through the pitch, and people ask me, going from baseball and now into fast pitch softball, what do you do differently? And the truth is, fundamentally, I don't teach anything different because biomechanics are biomechanics, Jay. The body moves generally the way it does. There's one simple little difference in these two sports from a mechanical standpoint, and that is pitch comes in a little flatter from fast pitch and comes in a little bit more descending in baseball.
So that was a long-winded answer to say Russ doesn't use technology.
Well, he does. It's a different kind of technology,
but
right?
we love him to say,
Yeah,
right?
he uses a lot of tools, and we use a lot of tools. And I'll tell you, the one I bet Russ uses, and there's no substitute for game speed. We use that machine a lot, and that's about as valuable of any tool that you can use. And we talked to Dr. Lynn over there with what his watching a ball at game speed. I don't know if there's anything that's more valuable than that we can do.
And both of your results speak for themselves. Russ is the hitting coach for a state championship softball team, and you're a hitting coach for multiple successful hitters professionally, collegiately, high school. When we get back, let's talk about some of those guys you've worked with in the past. Again, this is John Bennett with the Travel Ball Show, co-host Russ McCubbins. Text in on the PPL text line 502-437-9680. 502-437-9680. We'll make sure to get those questions addressed, but we'll be back in 3-4 minutes.
Good job. Yeah, good job, guys. Y'all did good.
You're the best around. You know, how do you not get pumped up every time that intro comes on, Russ?
I'm so glad they don't have you singing on there.
Me too.
That'd be brutal.
Welcome back to the Travel Ball Show. You got John Bennett, your host, with Russ McCubbins and Jay Sorg, our esteemed guest today. We're going to check out the PPL text line, Jay. A couple good questions came in. How long should a parent give an instructor before they start to see signs of improvement?
Yeah. So this is. I'm probably not going to give you a great answer because it's tough. Because what's going to happen is if your instructor's doing their job, they're going to look at that swing in the beginning and formulate a plan, and they're going to have to break you down a little bit. So there's going to be a time period where you get a little bit worse before you get better if you're really doing this right. And so each player is going to be totally different. How much do you got to break down? How athletic are they? How quick are they going to be able to make those adjustments? I think the biggest thing for me is your first session you go in with somebody, they should be able to say, look, I see this, this, and this. I want to go in this order. I want to start with this, and then we can move to this, and then we can move to this. And you have a plan. And every week we come up with a plan. And I actually like parents being there. I know I might be one of the only few instructors that likes that. But I want to make sure that we're all on the same page when we leave that. When they leave the facility.
I totally agree, Jay. If they're there, they can help reinforce what you said. I have some take notes and things like that, so they know, because we can't always be there for their games, right?
That's good feedback, and for the parent that sent that text in, thank you so much, because obviously as parents we want to see our kids have success as quickly as possible, right? But the reality is it takes time, and if everybody could do it.
If you don't have a plan, you're not going to get better. And if you got a plan and you're executing, or if you've got to change that plan a little bit because it's always adjustments that are made. I mean, we do that every single week if we need to adjust something. But stay in communication, and if you're not getting a plan, then you probably outlived your stay at that place.
There you go. It takes time, folks. If nothing else, give them a chance. Another text on the PPL text line. When should a young player begin to take lessons?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it depends on how mature that player is. Can they listen to instruction? Can they last the duration of whatever your lesson is, whether it's a 30-minute, 45-minute, or an hour lesson? Can they last that duration? I have had kids that come in at 8 years old if they've been mature, but really, even at that age, it's more or less one of those things. I have them come in and say, okay, this is what I think you need to do at home. And then maybe we see them again somewhere in the future. I really see 9 or 10 years old when they really start seeing them on a weekly basis, where I know that they can do their homework, they're mature enough, and I can trust them we want to give everybody their money's worth, right? We're not trying to take anybody's money. And I just think if you get too young of a kid, too immature, bring them in, let's take a look at it, and I'll give you tips on what to do at home.
Gotcha. Russ, you had a question?
Well, I was just going to say, Jay, don't you think too, asking the player, girl or boy, now, did you do those things over the week that we spoke about, or over the last couple of weeks? And if they give you the impression that they really haven't done anything from that previous lesson to this one, I'm sure you probably have, and I have, you go to the parent and say, I just don't know if this child is ready at this moment, because I don't really just want to take you.
Right. And we know. I mean, you can tell us you're doing something, but we'll know if you're working on it or not. We can see that. Yeah.
That's good stuff. Jay, what do you feel, having been on the college coaching side, at the professional level as well, what are some ways young players can gain exposure to get the most exposure to the colleges and to the scouts out there today? What are some things that you're seeing that make sense and are good values?
So I think first off, it's a game that is changing all the time. When I was coaching, the way we watched players and we got our recruits was a little bit different than the way you're seeing it happen now. It also changes. It varies per sport. I think a couple things. I think number one, can you get in front of these coaches? How do you get in front of them? Well, are you playing in the right place to get you in front of them when you're playing your games? Are you going to some of the camps that they're going to be at when you start identifying some of the schools you want to be at? I think you got to email these coaches. I think things like what PBR is doing, where you got a profile and they're trusted, and you can send your profile to those coaches ahead of time to make sure they get a chance to take a look, and especially if your numbers are right, that's for the level you're looking at. I think you send those profiles so they can see them, so they can start making ways to come see you. I will say this with recruiting services, I've had that question a lot. My take on recruiting services are they going to work for you, or are they just sending stuff out? That's number one. And then number two, do they have relationships with these coaches? You need to be around people that have relationships with coaches. That when Russ picks up the phone to call a coach, that person trusts Russ and says, that doesn't mean they're going to recruit that player, but they're going to come watch that player because they trust what Russ is going to say. Mm-hmm. And I think you've got to make sure you're putting yourself in some situations around people that have that kind of trust.
Do you take yourself back into your coaching days at Morgan State? Probably because it's more pertinent there than it is at the pro level, I think. So you get contacted by parents or players, and they're wanting to give you the stat line. Oh, my child hit 438 with 13 home runs and blah blah blah. So talk a little about how important those statistics are, as opposed to say you got to see it with your own eyes first.
Yeah, well, the one thing sometimes states, you can look at the problem is we don't know what level of competition you're playing against. We don't know who's keeping game changer. We don't know exactly any of those things. So we take stats with a grain of salt. But the thing that we can, I know there's talk, exit velocity and this and that, but it's a number that we can look at and say, that does fit in our system, and we can trust the people that have that number on file for you. Then that at least gives us an idea of say, hey, we probably need to see this with our own eyes. Now, all of those things don't matter if you can't play the game.
Right.
So, but what we're going to do as a coach, we're going to see this and say, oh, that's intriguing. We're going to make some phone calls. Hey, have you seen this player? We're talking to other recruits. We ask other recruits, hey, have you played against so-and-so? We're asking everybody. Dylan Lawson was really good. Of course, I had great coaches. Jason Ryan, goes down the line. Graham Johnson. I had great coaches there. Man, you talk about being thorough. They were talking to coaches. They were talking to opponents' coaches. They were talking to players. They were talking to opponents' players. They were going through the system.
So parents and players, if you ever had an idea as to who's watching or who's listening, everybody's watching, everybody's listening. So the question is, because you see it every now and then, players act differently when someone's in the stands, right? When they're not there, maybe not the same story, but everyone's always listening. People talk. These coaches, I tell you, one thing that I've learned throughout the recruiting process with my son and others is the college baseball, college softball, college sports in general community is connected. Whether it's a JUCO to a D1 to an NAI to a D2, it doesn't matter. All those folks talk, and it's pretty amazing. If they want to find out information on your son or daughter, they're going to find out information on your son or daughter. Jay, question for you. Did you ever miss?
Oh, absolutely we did. It just happens. But, had first rounders miss all the time, and those are the best in the world in evaluating, right? Mm-hmm. And we're going to miss the college coaches. But going back, that's why we're so thorough. Because, especially in college baseball, with limited amount of scholarships, there's a roster limit. And this is a game where you depend on a lot of players. And I love basketball, but if you have one or two really good basketball players, you can have a really good team. That's not true in baseball. So your margin for error on missing is very, very slim. And then there's rules, there's rules on top of those rules when guys transfer. And I know things have changed since I was there, but you have to be thorough. And you will still absolutely.
Well, it's baseball, right? It's sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, sometimes it rains. What do you got, Russ?
Well, tell me, so again, you're more up on these numbers. A lot of parents are nowadays too, as their child gets into the high school ages. But so, what is the number of full scholarships that say Division I program would have
for baseball? 11.7.
11.7, and how many players would be on what you call an active roster?
So you get 35 on the roster, and if I'm not mistaken, it's a 27 you're allowed to be on scholarship. And I don't know if COVID changed some things, and I've been out, so I don't know exactly all of it. But before COVID, you had to have a minimum number of 25%. So back when we played, if you remember, a coach would come and say, "Hey, I'm going to offer you books." Well, you can't do that anymore. You have to have if you're going to offer $1, you got to offer 25%.
I think I got a pair of batting gloves.
Yeah.
So 25%. Well, I mean, so in your experience, then, how many would get a full scholarship?
We've never had anybody on a full scholarship other than an academic and athletic.
So a combination type.
Combination.
So when
Yeah.
people say my son or daughter got a full scholarship, we are talking some type of combination scholarship.
Yeah, at the Division I level.
We talk
Just-
about academics, and that's another area for you parents out there, as well as players. Listen up, please. That ACT score means a lot, and what that means is, Jay, and correct me if I'm wrong, that coach is looking at how much is this player going to cost me, and if you have an ability to offset those academic monies, and they don't have to pay as much on the athletic side, that makes you even more attractive. So take the classes to help prepare for ACTs. If you can get as good as you can, because there's a lot of money out there, and it makes you more attractive to these college coaches. Wonderful.
Jay, as these young players say go from the 10, U12, U14, they're working their way up. Now they're in the high school age. At what age do you think? Because you hear all these stories about so and so verbally committed in the 6th grade and all this kind of crazy stuff. Really, at what age are you starting to begin to recruit some of these players?
Well, different for each level. You take the Power 5 conferences, they're recruiting guys a lot younger than the mid-majors are. And the problem you have sometimes if you're a mid-major and you get somebody commit early and then all of a sudden they blow up, they're decommitting, and then you've so you're waiting a little bit on that. Now, some of these, the Power 5 schools, they'll be committing some guys as freshmen, and we've seen that happen. I know we have a sophomore in our facility that's committed to a really good school right now. And so I will say this, I'm jumping on this a little bit. I would love to see the NCAA step in on that. I know the NCAA says they're for the welfare of the player. I just don't think it's in the player's best interest to be pressured to commit to a school as a freshman.
Now, when you mean that
in high school,
isn't there there's so many angles to that statement? Like, is it in their best interest mentally, psychologically, right?
Everywhere. I don't think it's in their best interest anywhere other than the fact that they can tell people they're committed. I mean,
and we've seen that too, right? And it is what it is. Sometimes kids get caught up in social media today, and it's a great tool to help people see what you're doing and let coaches have an opportunity to evaluate you. But kids are kids, and it's hard to block out that social pressure. And I wish throw Twitter and all of it out the door. Granted, we use it. But the kids can get caught up in it, which can be unfortunate at times. And I do think sometimes it's a game of committing just to have that tweet, right, to say that you've done that. And those are all great accomplishments, and I wish everybody could do that if that's what they want. And I do think there's a lot of opportunity out there for players to play at the next level, whatever sport it might be. If they take away the D1 or bust mentality, right? There's a lot of good programs out there that people can continue to play. If that's what they want.
We talk about that all the time, that I want you to look more for your fit. You've got to find your fit, because it's more than just the baseball or softball. It's, do you like being in a big city? Do you like being in a smaller city? Do you like a big campus? Do you like a small campus? Do you like a medium campus? What do you want to have around you? What's the academic, on the academic side, is this fitting what you want to do academically and possibly professionally? And the fit is so, or what about your role on the team? For Casey, my son, Bellarmine was extremely attractive because they were going to allow him to pitch in, play a position there. And so, every school wasn't going to offer that. And so things you got to find what's that right fit for you. And I think sometimes we get a little bit too excited to say the prestige of this, as opposed to, that's why the transfer portal, let's be honest, that's why the transfer portal is in the mess that it's in right now.
Mm-hmm. And we talked about it a couple weeks ago, Russ, about selecting a travel team. Sometimes people want to play for the most prestigious travel team before asking all the questions when they commit, right? Understanding the full commitment and just signing up, right? It isn't always that great, but that's good insight, Jay. And Jay's not only had a career on the field, both as a player, as a coach, but as a dad. He's got a daughter that runs cross country for Liberty and track. He's got a young daughter that's a volleyballer and a basketballer. So be ready NBA, be ready professional volleyball ranks. And he's got a older son that played football collegiately, and a younger son that is playing baseball. So he's gone through a lot of different exercises as player, coach, parent, writing checks.
I have seen this at every level, from professional to college. I've travel ball coached, and I've been a parent on the recruiting, and I think I've seen it from every angle I can.
Is being a travel ball coach like buying a boat? The best 2 days are when you buy it, when you sell it.
I tried not to be a travel ball coach, but it just worked out that way.
I'm sure. Hey, make sure you text into the PPL Pitching Performance Lab text line. Want to give those guys a shout down in Lexington, Kentucky. Chad does a phenomenal job, and please reach out to those guys. Their success speaks for itself with the folks that they're helping to achieve velocities greater than when they started, and they just spit them out. I've seen it firsthand. They do it from a biomechanics, and they just got something special happening down in Lexington, Kentucky. So make sure to reach out to Pitching Performance Lab if you want your son or daughter to gain a few more miles an hour. I'm not sure if they do softball, but I would guess that they do.
I don't know, but I'll tell you, they may on the hitting end, and they may on the conditioning end, maybe on the but I'll tell you, they do a great job. I've been down there before. He does a great job.
Yeah, they do. Well, we're going to come back. Make sure to text into the PPL text line 502-437-9680. We're going to have our last segment with Jay Sorg, our guest, Russ and John on the Travel Ball Show. We'll be back momentarily.
Yes, I can't remember the stat, and I don't even know how
Welcome back to the Travel Ball Show. I'm your host, John Bennett, with my fearless co-host, Mr. Russ McCovens. Russ, back in 30 years ago when we were roommates.
Has it been that long?
It's been 30 years.
All three of
us sitting here, 1991 grads. We're creeping up on half a century. So yeah, it's been 30 years. My goodness, right? If the walls could talk, right? We don't want them to.
They can't talk in this venue. I promise you that.
Russ, you had a couple questions for Jay.
Well, Jay, we're around a lot of parents of travel ball kids, but sometimes we're around parents that they give their child lessons where they don't necessarily play travel ball. Maybe they've got 4 or 5 kiddos, and mom takes these there and dad takes these there. Travel ball just doesn't fit into their lifestyle. So talk a little bit about. This is the Travel Ball Show. We are obviously big proponents of travel ball, but back in our day, it was you play for a youth league. You might have gotten lucky to make the all-star team. You played a couple of tournaments, and that was pretty much the end of things. Now we're spring, summer, fall, in a lot of these sports. Give your perspective on how important it is at whatever age to try your very best if you can to get your child into a travel sport.
Okay, yeah. So I think there's a couple questions there. I think I am a big proponent of travel baseball. I think there's a lot of good things that come from it. It is good for recruiting. I think it takes you places that you would not normally go that are a lot of fun. So it's some beautiful complexes that we have, especially in our area. I'm a proponent. I do think there's obviously some flaws. I think we can do a whole show on some things we feel that way.
I just heard a commitment to a future show, Russ. That's what I heard.
Yeah, I would love to come on. I think, so 2 questions on that. I think number 1 was what age should you start? I think this when it comes to travel ball, and I think travel ball faces, and I know I'm getting off the topic for a second. There's a part of travel ball where it's simply make it fun enough for the kids to keep playing the daggone game. And that's at those younger levels. And obviously you want some teaching to be done there. But you know what? It's more important to me that the kids continue to play and have fun at that level than it is even for the development at that point. Then I think you get to a point where it's about development. Then you get to a point where it's a combination of development and exposure. And then you get to a point where it's just almost about exposure. Obviously, we always want development. We want it on every phase. But I think there's a priority on all of those. Now, I will say this. I think you can about go through 12 years old and do whatever the heck you want to do. And then I think you start getting to 13, at least on the baseball side, and maybe even a little earlier on the softball side, because the girls are earlier than the boys are. But I think at 13, that's a really good age where you start saying, okay, you kind of got to start figuring this thing out. Now, you had a second question. What if they can't play travel ball? Well, there's other ways to go. I think number one thing, see if you can be a sub sometimes, especially if you pitch. There's tournaments. I kept a low roster because I wanted to make sure everybody got enough playing time. But because of that, we go to some of these longer tournaments. We would need to bring in some extra pitchers to fill the innings and not overtax the guys that we had, right? Exactly. So be a sub, go to camps, go to showcases, get in front of these coaches, be around people, like we said earlier, that can recommend you to and have personal relationship with these coaches. So it certainly can be done, and you're multi-sport athletes, and that may be the only avenue you have. And I hate to not have, if somebody wants to play every daggone sport, I want them to be able to do it. But I will tell you this, it's not all green like everybody says, where they say, we want all these multi-sport athletes. I know I hear that all the time. We all do. But the truth of the matter is, it gets very tough to do that the older you get, because all these seasons are now running into each other, especially when you're throwing the travel ball in there. But I do think you should be a multi-sport athlete through 12 years old. You got to keep doing it.
I had to chuckle a little bit, Jay. A few months ago, you were chasing Macy around volleyball and basketball conflicts, and sometimes you're going to upset somebody because you can't be everywhere all the time. But that we've been living that life a little bit at the Bennett
Well, I always
household.
joke around with coaches, and I was probably, I'm not saying I wasn't one of them, but it was, I love multi-sports athletes. I want you to play another sport until what? It conflicts with mine,
Yeah,
right?
until it hurts my team.
Exactly.
Hey, Jay, with all the different training techniques out there, right? So it used to be when we were younger, if you took lessons, that was a differentiator, right? That could help you kind of rise to the top a little bit. Well, if everybody's taking lessons, what's the next step? Well, I'm gonna do it all year long then. And if everybody's doing it all year long and everybody's taking lessons and everybody's on the same plane, what's next? So from the mental side of things, I posted a video. If you haven't seen it, it's on the Travel Ball Show. Jay was talking about when a player struggles on the field or court, does that impact their thoughts of themselves, their identity? Jay, from the mental side of things, what are you seeing on your side? Because you've been a coach at a high level for a long time. How are you seeing kids impacted today from the mental side, and what tools are you seeing for them to address it?
Okay. Well, we do have more mental coaches now, and we've seen some really good people come around. And so I think I think if you struggle on the mental side, see somebody. The mental side's extremely important, but I think all of us in here, we love coaching. We love coaching the game, but one of the reasons we like it so much is there's some mentorship that goes with that. And it's more, let's face it, not everybody's going to play in college. In fact, a very small percentage. A smaller percentage is going to play professional ball. Now, I want that to be your goal. If that's your goal, you have to. But let's face it, that's not always going to happen for everybody. So what should we be doing as coaches? We should be mentoring so everyone has success in their life after or during, just their life in general. And so the mental part's extremely important. You were talking about the piece we did talking about identity and how people view themselves. And I think that's one of the scarier parts of what's going on in youth sports today is these kids are identifying in their sport. And so now you're riding peaks and valleys all the time. And so I'm playing well, man, I am great. I'm playing well, I'm struggling, I am worthless. That's not it. We gotta have a higher identity, whatever that is. Mine comes through my faith, and I know who I am in my faith. That's my identity, right? But if I identify myself as a coach, I had some pretty lean years. And so I'd have felt really bad about myself during those years. But I know that's not who my sport is not who I am. It's something I do. It's something I take pride in, but it's not who I am. But I think a lot of these kids nowadays feel like that's who I am. And then what happens when that sport is gone, or what happens when they're struggling? That's a major, major problem. We've got to do a good job as parents, as coaches, as teachers, as mentors. We have to do a better job of guiding these kids away from that kind of mentality. It's a responsibility. We have a responsibility.
Well, I think that's well said. I think maybe or who that really speaks to more is a parent or a player or even a coach of a high school kid, right? It's kind of really about the first time when they start to go through that phase of, hey, I got cut from that team, So let's say you start playing sports, travel sports, maybe from age 8 years old, and you've always played all these years. You get up to high school, you make it your freshman year, you go to a really, really competitive school where there's a lot of really good players like we all went to. And then maybe it's about sophomore year, maybe it's junior year, and oh my, I got cut, And if my identity in my mind is as a baseball player, now I'm a failure.
That's right. Yeah, we have a responsibility to really monitor that and really guide and really put the focus on other things.
And that
teach them different successes, right?
Correct. And it starts when they're younger. That ride home, for example. Love them when they go 0 for 4. Love them when they go 4 for 4, right? And the amount of love isn't dictated by how successful you are on the court or the field or whatever that looks like. But that's good stuff, Jay. Hey, question for you. Did you ever have a rule with the kids after a game if you were coaching or a parent on the way home? Did you have a 30-minute rule or what?
A 30-minute rule. There's a lot of I got that from professional ball. A lot of people do that. You got a 30-minute rule because in professional ball, you're playing every single day. You carry that daggone thing with you. And I did a lot of years, man. And I lost a lot of weight and that's why my hair looks like it does now, and I'm losing it. And I had a lot of stress over that. But there's a 30-minute rule. You play. You can be mad as you want. I don't care how mad you want to get. You can be as mad as you want for 30 minutes, but on that 31st minute, you got to forget about it, and it's time to move on. And we had that rule, and in transfer that, Johnny, we have talked about that in the past. I did it as a parent too. because I did want to talk about the game because I coached and I wanted to go over some good things and some things we got to get better at.
Right?
Teachable moments, right? But there had to be a 30-minute rule with that to let my son decompress or my kids decompress on that. And then, but probably for me too, I think there's a lot of times parents need to decompress a little bit.
It's that good in theory, right? Not always applied. And I'm sure I'm guilty of it. If you ask my kids, I'm sure they'd say I was guilty of it. But all these are great things, Jay. Hey, we're wrapping up here in a moment. What are some good things you're seeing in travel sports right now?
Well, I think good things. Players are better. I mean, let's face it. I mean, I sat here and I was thinking, I'm seeing arms in high school that I saw in pro ball. It's amazing.
Exactly.
Players are just better. They're bigger, faster, stronger.
95 is the new 85, right?
That's right. So I think that's a good thing. It's more competitive. I'll tell you something too. You see now all the time. These kids come in as freshmen. They are not phased to go out there in any situation. I mean, if you watch that in every sport, it's like game's on the line with the free throwers, the freshman on there, and he's sinking both of them like he didn't because they've done it a million times.
Yeah, so they've already been in that scenario.
That's right.
Think about the first time you were in a really, really big game on a team that maybe picked you up, or it was an all-star group or something, and 2 on, 2 out, you strike out, you end the game, and you have to fail many times.
Right.
Well, that's one of the attributes of travel ball, right? Because these kids get put into a lot of
opportunities.
They get put into some stressful situations, and good and bad. Guess what? If you succeed, great. But if you don't, you get to do it again in an hour.
That's right.
Right. So it's good and bad. But I do believe it teaches them and gives them the confidence to handle those situations when they're presented later in life. Right.
And these guys are playing nationally now. If you're playing in a decent travel ball organization, you're playing nationally, and you're playing with some of the best players in the country and the world. And these guys, man, they know how good they are. And where we were like, if I went to Florida, I'm going, oh man, I'm playing against these kids in Florida. These kids don't.
Right. They get put into a lot of cool venues, and you talk about that. Cool venues, great competition. So by the time it does matter, they're used to it. It's no big deal. Well, Jay, we're wrapping up. A lot of great stuff tonight. If you want to check this out on the podcast, you can go to ESPN680.com and find us on the SoundCloud. I'll be putting it out there on social. You can go to the travelballshow.com, and it's got all of our social links. Also, some great Christmas ideas. We talked about tech. You can click on the Pocket Radar featured product on the travelballshow.com, and it'll take you directly to Pocket Radar, one of the best tools I think you can have as a travel ball parent. And don't forget to check out Jay Sorg and Shelly Sorg at Sorg Sport and Wellness. Jay, where can they find you online, Jay? You got 30 seconds.
Yeah, sorgsportandwellness.com. You can find us there. We are on Facebook under Sorg Sport and Wellness also. On Twitter, Jay Sorg Wellness is mine. And so, but our website is great. We just redid it. See our website. Come visit us. And
go check them out, guys and girls. Get your sons and daughters in front of them. But hey, have a great week. We'll see you next week. Take care. Thanks, Jack.
Great job. Thanks,
Thank you,
guys. Appreciate it. That was awesome, man.
Well done, man.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I thought it was great.
Yes, sir.